This is TWiT. I followed the tech news the whole time I was in Kauai. I did. I know, because I knew that I was coming back today, and I thought, I don't want to not know what happened. If I wasn't, I admit, a little shocked to turn on the TV a couple of days ago and see Julian Assange carted away from the Ecuadorian embassy in London, looking, I'm afraid, a little like...
little haggard?
Well, I think he was going for the Jesus thing. I don't know what it was. He almost was like blessing people as they took him out. There he is. So, but there are two takes on this. The U.S. government says, "Oh no, we're not going after him for what he published. We're going after him because he hacked and encouraged hacking. He helped Chelsea Manning break into a classified system. They have emails saying my team is working on it." That's the smoking gun, apparently. On the other hand, it's pretty obvious that the minute they arrested Chelsea Manning, they were gunning for Julian Assange. WikiLeaks published a stunning video, which I vividly remember, called Collateral Murder, showing U.S. drones used on civilians, or actually it was military helicopters, on civilians and journalists. And this is where WikiLeaks really became famous. More recently, of course, in the election in 2016, Julian went from a hero of the left to enemy of the left when he, we don't know, he published emails from the Democratic National Committee. We don't know if he was acting on Russia's behalf or not. But in any case, that's not what he's been arrested for. He's been arrested for hacking.
Well, the Obama administration, I think...
he was public enemy number one for the Obama administration.
Yeah, it was, but there was I think a very salient reason that the Obama administration did not pursue charges against him, and that was because we don't have a clear definition of what constitutes speech in an era of big tech. And so if they were to pursue charges, and if somebody were to claim that he was a publisher doing an act of journalism,
then the First Amendment protects him.
Then, well, I mean, it may or may not have protected him, but it opened up an arena for discussion that I think not me, but like the people who were involved weren't yet ready to have.
Look, Nixon didn't like Daniel Ellsberg because he leaked the Pentagon Papers. But without the Pentagon Papers, we wouldn't have known the true state of the Vietnam War. That was protected. The New York Times and the Washington Post published it. I hope you saw the movie about it, The Post. It was very dramatic. They tried to break into Assange, Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office. They wanted him, but they never got him because.
Right, I think this is. Don't you think this is different though?
Well, that's my question. Is this different? Here's a good article by James Ball in The Atlantic. You don't have to like Julian Assange to defend him. The effort to extradite and prosecute the WikiLeaks founder threatens the free media, which is in contrast to the Motherboard article we showed earlier, which says it's not about free press; it's about hacking. It's troubling. It's problematic. Assange is a problematic person, but that's the whole point of free speech. You have to defend.
But it raises a really good point, which is we don't have. There are a lot of fundamental questions that unfortunately we are not yet discussing in this country because our country, in order to have those conversations, requires a lawsuit first, right? To have the conversations where we get to action. So we have a lot of questions around what is speech, what constitutes speech, if it's been automated, are the algorithms to blame, is the data to blame, from that to who owns your face, who owns your biometrics.
And you think the proper place is for the courts to decide?
No, I don't think so. But that, unfortunately, is the way that democracy, the levers of democracy, it does in this country. Now, in other countries, they've just jumped ahead to regulation. But this is a problem that's not going to go away.
I should point out that the reason Assange was in the Ecuadorian embassy was not because of U.S. charges, but Swedish charges against him for rape. Those charges were dropped, but now he's arrested for the London Metropolitan Police arrested him on the behalf of the United States. They're going to extradite him because he was indicted in the U.S. for this hacking. At the end of his piece, Ball says Assange might be an a-hole. Scratch that. Assange is an a-hole, but we're going to have to stand up for him anyway. I have very mixed feelings about this. I think he did a lot of good with collateral murder, rather. I think he was probably a Russian cutout in the 2016 election. So there's that. On the other hand, I think
there are. I don't know.
But we knew the minute he published collateral murder, there would be trumped up charges against him of some kind. I thought.
Yeah. So I've had two careers. I've been a futurist for 15 years, and the years before that, I was a foreign correspondent. So I worked at the Wall Street Journal and at Newsweek. And here's what I would have to say. There are plenty of cases like the Panama Papers where there's been widespread collaboration and journalists working for the public interest, and much like the Pentagon Papers, releasing information, in a way to shine the light on corruption. I think we need some kind of, Assange makes it sound, and WikiLeaks make it sound like this is all open, and through that openness and freedom comes justice, but it's not entirely open. There's still an arbiter, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is an
untrained arbiter who's co-opted by other governments in his own ways.
Chelsea Manning, her sentence was, what did Obama do? He commuted it, right? He didn't pardon her. He commuted her sentence.
Right.
He said, "You've served enough time. We're going to let you out." Clearly, people were very angry at WikiLeaks for releasing that, but I think it's very analogous to the Panama Papers or the Pentagon Papers. These were government leaks, but they were of information that was in the public interest.
And there's also timing. So while there were certainly revelations about lives that were put in danger, lives that were lost once that information was dumped. Yeah. However, there were instances of new people whose lives were put in danger. Again, these are the kinds of things that a journalist or a team of journalists working together would.
No, Snowden did it responsibly, right? Yeah. Snowden took the material and gave it to a number of reputable publications and said, "You need to vet this. And you need to put it out in an appropriate way because I'm not capable of doing that." Assange did the opposite. In fact, I think what you're thinking about that was really troubling was the American diplomatic cables that were leaked that had the names of American agents and it put them in grave peril.
That's right. And just because the documents are leaked doesn't mean that they are correct.
They just dumped them out. They didn't vet them. They didn't give them to a journalistic entity. They claimed we're a journalistic entity, but they just dumped them.
Right.
Which to me, I guess, is why I've always viewed Snowden and Assange differently. Yes. And because of exactly what you said, I've always viewed them in different ways. And my thoughts on Chelsea Manning, although I think that the way that she was treated while she was incarcerated and a lot of those things have been terrible, because she was, a soldier when she leaked that information, there was some, certain things that for me made that a little bit more, I guess, complicated too. But I think that gets to the key point of this, right? Is that what he's now being kind of accused of are things that are, I guess, fundamentally comes to the question of whether or not what he does is journalism. And although I see,
is he making that argument? Is he saying I'm a journalist, I'm doing journalism? I don't think he
has said that. He's not saying that right now. He has said that in the past. WikiLeaks has absolutely said that in the past, but WikiLeaks has changed so much in the last decade that it's hard to know where they stand, right? And I think it's interesting that a lot of the First Amendment advocates and experts have very clearly tried to narrow this and say this is not about this is not going under journalistic things, and again this is about hacking, which whether you're a journalist or not is you're not immune to those sorts of things if you're breaking into other people's databases and whatnot. So but it still, this question does come up, right? Like, what was the role in this, and how is this different? I'm with you, Leo. It's complicated.
It's troubling to me.
It is troubling in a lot of ways. It's interesting to think about what would have happened if he would have just not been such a jerk,
such a dick
at the embassy.
But that's okay.
Like honestly, because it got to the point that it was Ecuador finally had enough, and they're like, we're not dealing with you anymore. But
this is a clear example of short-term gain without thinking about the downstream implications. And I think that in all of from what I've read, it seems as though some of the people involved had their hearts in the right places. But again, like, you've got to think in a very rational, measured way. What are all of the implications of making this information public at this particular time in this particular way?
I think we can agree that it should have been done, at least should have been done in Snowden fashion. Something more responsibly, right?
Right. But he's not a U.S. citizen.
Right.
So that means this is the other thing. Like, I know a lot about the First Amendment because I had to study it. A lot of Americans don't quite understand the First Amendment, and people outside the United States aren't bound by it.
Right.
So again, I think this is
But he's being prosecuted by the U.S., not by people outside of the United States.
Yeah, but it's not. But the First Amendment is not a piece of this. This is under just standard cybercrimes law.
To reiterate your point, this is from the Ball article. The Obama administration had an institutional policy that concluded prosecuting Assange for the publication of classified documents was too controversial and legally risky because a successful prosecution could serve as the foundation for future misuse of that authority to clamp down on more traditional media outlets. The risk to the First Amendment was significant. And then he points out perhaps the Trump administration has discovered additional evidence that changes that analysis. And that's what we don't know yet. But the optics of it are, if you're going to prosecute him for the email that says, well, our team is working on it, well, we're going to help you crack this, Chelsea. If you're going to prosecute him on that, it's clear that what you're really you're prosecuting him for the release of the information. You just don't want to call it that. It's like putting Al Capone in jail for tax evasion. That's, it wasn't the real reason he was in Alcatraz, but it was an effective surrogate.
Well, and also let's not forget that you never want to no lawyers or governments want to bring somebody to trial or bring charges if they're not very, very certain that they're going to win.
Right.
So.
And Assange complicated it by his personality disorder. I guess I could call it a personality. Something went on that caused him to.
I think if you're confined for 7 years,
could be the reason.
Yeah. I'm confined.
One of the reasons the Ecuadorian embassy kicked him out is he wasn't cleaning up after his cat. That's one of the reasons they gave.
Yeah, well, there's
some other cleaning issues.
He was playing music loud at night. He was stinky, and he wasn't cleaning up after his cat.
There was a great article a few months ago about somebody who, I guess, like, he was their house guest and he wouldn't leave, who described what it was like. And this was years before, he went into the Ecuadorian embassy. Apparently he's like the house guest from hell, no matter where he is and no matter what his circumstances. So,
but you shouldn't put somebody in jail for that.
No, I agree with you, but at the same time, I'm with you, but I also sort of sympathize in some ways with the Ecuadorian embassy.
I don't blame the Ecuadorians. In fact, I'm impressed.
You're like, we didn't sign up for this.
For 9 years, they put up with that. It's pretty good.
The sad thing is, that this is a good opportunity for us to talk about how to move forward and what needs to change going forward and how to, and that's not happening. We're, nobody's taking this as an opportunity to recalibrate how we deal with, our laws and technology and crime and all that stuff.
Your point being that things have changed thanks to technology, and we need to update our thinking about what that means, what the First Amendment means in that light.
Yeah, and I feel like we cycle every couple years. I'm looking at my bookshelf, and there's a Wired reporter named Andy Greenberg who wrote this really great book called This Machine Steals Secrets. Yep. Like every couple years, there's this conversation that that sort of pipes up and we all get fascinated about it and then we forget about it and we move on and then we're surprised when it all happens again, or we're stuck in a similar situation where we don't know what to do. And now, I feel like we keep missing these opportunities to make some changes,